Information on climate impacts on agriculture to this committee. Agriculture is extremely sensitive to climate and weather, and resilience of our production systems to changes in climate occurs by understanding these impacts and their effects. It is also important to realize that U.S. agriculture is diverse, and that simple general statements about the impacts of climate are not possible. Climate change is evidenced by rising temperatures, increasing precipitation and intensity of storms, rising carbon dioxide and ozone levels will impact agriculture. These changes are not consistent across the United States and may affect some agricultural areas more than others. The scenarios of climate change in the U.S. have implications for agriculture, which must be understood to protect the capability of food, feed, fiber, and fuel production and quality. One of the easier ways for us to understand the implications of agriculture or climate on agriculture is to consider the impacts of climate on animals. The increase in temperature and potential for more heat waves and extreme heat events will affect animal production. Animals respond to a combination of temperature and humidity in a similar fashion to humans. When it is hot and humid, we decrease our activity, reduce our food intake, and generally are less energetic than at other times. High temperature and humidity reduce the feed intake of animals, which in turn reduces the rate of meat, milk, or egg production. At the opposite end of the range, cold temperature extremes can increase feed intake, but the extra energy is consumed to keep the animals warm, which results in reduced growth or milk production. Extremes in hot or cold have negative impacts on animals, and heat waves can have serious consequences on animals and can create conditions in which there's increased death of animals in feedlots or barns. High temperature extremes will affect plants as well as animals, and of particular concern is the probability of heat waves or high temperature events at the pollination stage. Exposure of pollen to high temperatures can destroy the pollen and reduce the production of seed or fruit. Occurrences of heat waves at pollen time can have significant and negative impacts on plant production. Plants differ in their reaction to temperature. Cool season plants which are best suited to lower temperatures include many of the vegetables like peas or spinach. Warm season plants like watermelon, cotton, or cucumber thrive when the temperatures are warm. As temperature warms, this causes the plants to progress through their stage of development at a rate which does not allow for maximum expansion of leaves, stems, or fruits. One example of potential impacts of warming temperatures on crop yield has been found for soybean. As temperatures increase, soybean yields in the southern U.S. are predicted to decrease by 3.5%, while in the Midwest they're projected to increase by 2.5%. Rising temperatures will exceed the optimum range for soybeans in the South, while bringing soybean into the optimum range in the Midwest. Likewise, for many vegetables, warming temperatures will cause a reduction in production even more quickly because these are cool season crops. While many of the vegetables are grown during the winter and temperate climates, the length at this time in which this period is optimal will decrease. Increasing winter temperatures does increase the length of the growing season, and there are potential negative impacts on fruit trees, which requires a certain amount of cooling or chilling in order to set fruit. Climate models and observations indicate that nighttime temperatures are rising faster than daytime temperatures. The shift in temperature patterns during the day has significant impacts on plants, particularly during the grain or fruit development periods. Warm temperatures at night increase the respiration rate, which reduces the amount of sugars and starches which can be stored in grain or fruit. This causes the fruit or grain size to be smaller and reduces the length of the grain filling period. Agriculture, or quality of agricultural produce, is not often thought of when we discuss climate change. However, there are many impacts of climate and weather on product quality. Variations in wine quality among years are related to subtle changes in weather at sensitive periods in the growing season. And there are direct and indirect effects of climate on agriculture. Agriculture has and can adapt to a changing climate. The areas in which we grow certain plants demonstrates how we adapt plant production systems to the climate. This adaptation has been occurring in agriculture for centuries as farmers have selected the best crops for their regions, changed their cultural practices to cope with the risks from environmental stresses, and modified their practices to reduce the impacts of biological stresses caused by weeds, insects, or diseases. Research has been able to help speed this process by providing information to guide the decisions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Hatfield, very much.